This is the Jess Walhoff Broadcasting Network on air, a podcast about trail and ultra running, but really, it's about becoming who you are meant to be. I'm your host, Jess Walhoff, inviting you into conversations about resilience, wonder, and the quiet magic of putting one foot in front of the other. Out on the trail, we learn to move our mountain, not by force, but by presence and persistence. And in that movement, we find joy in the journey. Welcome to the JWBN on air. Today you have just me on the end of the mic with some ramblings about the epitome of running for me. That is finding the joy in this running journey. I know all of our individual whys for why we run, why we race, or why we do hard things are vastly different. But I think in the end, the result that we're searching for, or at least the moments that we relish in, even in those very much so type 2 fun moments, have a sort of theme of joy to them, or at least they do for me personally. Looking back at the evolution of my running journey, if you listen to my previous podcast, intro podcast, two things that stood out to me. One of these things held back my ability to find joy in running, and then the other one helped me find the joy and freedom. I hope my experience can help you on your own running path. So from the start, I mentioned my siblings and their natural talent and skill they had to make running look effortless. And they also did it at incomparable speeds. I'll bring on them here for just a second. So I had to do a little bit of research here, but looked up some times, thanks to some deep diving on Northwestern Track and Field's website. My younger sister was a good sprinter, turned an even better mid-distance runner. She had some personal bests in the 400 meter of a 57.83, her 600 meter personal best of 135.91, which she actually ran at she competed at nationals in the 600 and indoor. And then the 800 meter, her personal best of 2:17.11. She was always on their 4x4 team, was always their leadoff runner. And then after her junior year, when she said, I'll try that 800, she did it one time on their B squad and immediately earned herself a spot as their leadoff 800 runner. And then her name is still on a current school record at Northwestern College in Iowa in the 4x4. And that actually includes a handoff to our cousin Katie, who is also a standout mid-distance runner. Meanwhile, my older brother, he discovered about halfway through high school that he was a decent runner. And then, again, looking back on college here, some of his college bests include running the 8 kilometer, pretty sure it was an 8K in cross country in 23:33. The 3,000 meter, his personal best was an 8:37. He also did the steeplechase in 9:55, and he actually still holds a current school record at Northwestern College in the indoor 5,000 meter on a 200 meter track in 5:16. One thing both my siblings were blessed with, along with that skill and talent, was a gene that I didn't pick up from my dad, like the one gene I didn't get from my dad's side of the family, and that is long legs, hence my brother's ability to do steeplechase. And then it just makes their stride look that much effortless. I got my mom's short, stubby legs. Thanks, Mom. So needless to say, they made normal people look like we're standing still, even when we're giving it all we got. And it's one of the reasons why I thought running really wasn't for me. I also didn't really have a whole lot of exposure to normal people running. Coming from a small rural community, there weren't very many people who did that as a hobby that I was aware of. It was really just the track and cross country athletes out there during the season. Occasionally you'd see a coach out there running as well. College felt nearly the same, but maybe because I wasn't really looking for it or aware of other people running, I still felt the only ones out there running were the athletes and the coaches. I also think fitness culture has changed a whole lot since I was in college. to date myself, I graduated college back in 2012. Um, it's pretty much only the athletes you ever saw in the gym lifting weights, with a few community members that were walking the track or using various cardio machines. You just didn't see a whole lot of normal people, um, like lifting weights, especially, but then also running. Um, I was a little bit of the exception. I kept up with my strength training routine and some cardio, but just using the cardio machines, mainly the elliptical, after I stepped away from collegiate soccer. But now it seems quite normal to see non-athletes consistently in gyms in that age group population. But that wasn't the case 15 years ago, especially in a small college town. So with that limited exposure to running, where I only saw it as something that fast people or real runners did, I didn't see myself as a runner for a very long time because of that comparison of myself to them. Uh, that comparison held me back from finding the joy of running until I didn't care about how fast or slow I was. I was just out there doing it. In fact, when I started training for my VO2 max test, all I had was a Timex stopwatch. Just hit the start button and stop button, and just like a timer. Um, and that's all I used when I was running. I just pretty much hit go and run by feel. Just enough to move forward, not enough to kill myself. Not exactly knowing what I was doing, but I was steadily building my aerobic base. After a few weeks of that is when I started introducing some speed by doing fartleks on the track or running a few laps a little at a harder effort. And again, all I was doing was just recording the time on my Timex stopwatch and trying to keep count of the laps on my fingers. I'm really good at finger counting. And then when I got home, I would map it out or input those numbers into Runkeeper, and that's when I would kind of figure out my paces. I mean, I had an idea of paces based off of all the track and field I watched my siblings do. But again, just that's what I had done myself, get a little bit of the paces, but I never committed any of those numbers to memory because they really weren't significant, at least to me, especially if I was going to compare myself to my siblings. So that was the thing, is just kind of erasing away all of that comparison and just putting in some numbers and I'm doing some work. I did this for the first 3 years of my running career before I was entered the new age and was gifted a Garmin GPS watch for Christmas in 2014. It still wasn't the fanciest thing, just the most basic GPS watch, but I could now see my splits for every mile. Prior to that, even when I started running outside, going for my longer runs, I would go for the run, hit that stopwatch, start button, run. If I ever stopped, say we didn't have trains through town, but for heavy traffic, I'd just pause my watch and then I'd start up again. Or if I had to catch my breath, I'd pause my watch, stand in place, and then start the watch up again when I started running. And then when I would get home, log back into Runkeeper, map out my run. Then that's the only time I actually ever knew how far I had run, was after the run. We kind of got used to some similar routes and some idea of how far I was running. But again, none of those times or mileage really are committed to my memory. Again, I was just out there doing it and doing it for me. Excuse me. So I finally got my GPS watch. Again, it was a basic watch, but it actually gave me a little bit of real-time results in that I could now see my splits for every mile. It wasn't telling me the pace I was running at that time, but once I hit a mile, it would beep off and tell me the split I had run for that mile. And I would know how far I was into my run, how far I had gone. New things for me. And then it kind of just opened up that new world for me, because now that I had those real-time mile splits, I could start trying to run certain paces or speed versus just by time and feel, since I had that real-time feedback. And kind of gave me that little oomph to push for a harder split. You know, if I saw something come up on my watch, I'm like, okay, next mile's got to be faster. So we're going to run faster and harder. So it did improve some of my training to a bit, and where I got built up a whole lot of speed, just because I had that information available to me. And then a couple years later, you know, get a newer, fancier watch, has even more to it. Now I have suddenly the pace available to see exactly what pace I'm running in the moment. My heart rate is there. You could see elevation invert. Not that I was using that much because I was still a road runner, but all that data was still there for me to see. You know, the watches just get fancier, and you just get more data available real time on the go. There's just so much information to analyze when you're on the move, and more targets to hit. And that just kind of caused me to keep constantly turning my wrist, glancing at my watch to see where it was at in all of that data. Even when I started making that transition to trail running, the data is still there, still on my wrist, still right there. And that might have been one of the hardest parts about the transition, was seeing all that data and it being slower with even the same hard efforts or even harder efforts. So just a note for newbies is to trail running. Trail running will most likely be a little slower and or harder to your road running due to usually more and or steeper hills and less friendly terrain. A little bit of science too. Slower ground reaction forces when it comes to contacting and pushing off of earth versus pavement. You also have the uneven ground, obstacles, you name it. Trail running is just a little bit different than road running. You can't just run a constant same pace. There's just a bit more, you know, road running is a good steady rhythm. You just nail that constant cadence. Trail running is more, gosh, I've heard it referred to a specific kind of dance, and I'm not going to be able to list that off the top of my head here, but trail running is just more of an art form, different art form than road running. Anyway, all this constant data, as useful and powerful as it can be, started to slowly steal my joy of running. I was comparing myself to my past self, whether it was my past self from last week, last year, or years before, constantly looking down at my wrist instead of looking up at the beautiful scenery around me. In 2021, I started a subtle change to my running, going out for time instead of miles. This started to bring back a little more joy, knowing that the miles would come when they came and time would click on. I knew exactly how long I would be out for a run. A 3-hour run is going to take exactly 3 hours instead of a 15-mile run, maybe taking anywhere from 2.5 hours on a good day or 3 plus 3.5 hours on a not so great day. I knew 3 hours was going to be 3 hours, and that could be 15 miles, it could be 18 miles, it might be 12 miles, depending where I'm at. It didn't really solve my data-driven problem completely, but it was a start. At this time, I also started running strictly by rate of perceived exertion, or as we call it, RPE, instead of pace, and just for a few reasons. Pace and heart rate can both vary on the day. An 8-minute pace might feel easier, like a 6 or a 7 on a scale of 10 on one day, and then a 10 out of 10 on another day. And heart rate might be more elevated to begin with at a workout or spike more rapidly one day than another day. And both are due to various causes in life, like life stresses, physical stresses, poor sleep, hormonal changes, etc. Whereas RPE is a constant. A 10 or a very hard effort always feels like a 10. Even though paces could drastically vary day to day and your heart rate might not resemble what that 10 looks like. Another thing is, if you're going by the heart rate on your wrist, not the most accurate data in the world either. You're going to want maybe a chest strap. They're showing that the arm straps are even more accurate. So you want to make sure if you're going to go by a heart rate, you want to make sure you're actually getting accurate data and feedback for that. But again, heart rate, again, is a lot more variable than an RPE. But for me, changing to that RPE-based training allowed me to stop looking at my watch. I knew the time would pass, the effort would be what it was meant to be, and the mileage would simply come at whatever pace it came at. I no longer stared at my watch for most of my runs, and I could look up and enjoy the trails again. It was beginning to take me back to where I started, just out there to be out there and just moving to move. Another big aha moment came leading up to my third attempt of the Mickelson FKT. My previous two attempts made me aware that the mileage marker pylons along the trail vary from the distance my watch read. This highly annoyed me in my first two attempts, as the trail is reported to be 108.8 miles long. Side note, it's actually 110.3. But if my watch was off by mile 30, how many more miles did I really have? You know, how many more miles off was, and each mile marker I'd see it be off by a mile from my watch. It just really irked me. So knowing this going into my third attempt in 2024, I simply changed my watch face from running when I was running to just show me the time when I started and or how long I've been out there and the time of day. Nothing else, or everything else was pretty much irrelevant on my watch for me. I can tell, if my heart rate or my effort are getting too high for the long trail ahead, and adjust accordingly just by listening to my body. I knew the miles would come for each mile marker that I would pass, and that was just what I was going to use for my mileage. And I knew I would reach Deadwood whenever I reached the end of the trail. Whatever mileage that was going to be made up or real. And I didn't need my watch to tell me those things. I just needed to know when to have my snacks and when to expect when sunset would be approaching. So when to grab my headlamp, and then also when to expect sunlight again. So looking forward to ditching the headlamp. No other features were needed, except I still needed something to record my GPS data so that I could submit my effort to fastest known time for verification for establishing the FKT on the Mickelson. So I had it all running, but all that information is just in the background. And that's how I've gone about nearly all my runs since. Time is the only thing showing on my watch. My effort is perceived. The miles come when they come. No more staring at my watch. Instead, I lose myself in the effort, or I lose myself in the trail. A form of transcendence, if you will. During those harder efforts, I lose myself to the primitiveness of just putting one foot in front of the other, turning the legs, trying to breathe, and pushing past the discomfort. Nothing else. Just simple. A sort of reset or a break for my brain from everything else in life. During the easier efforts, anything under the sun can take place. I can think through my day, I can problem solve personal issues, or sometimes I even solve the most complex issues going on in the world, only to forget all the solutions when my feet stop running. I do a lot of brainstorming that leads to things like creating this podcast. And every once in a while, I find the sweet spot where I'm truly lost to the world and enter a meditative flow where the trail just takes my feet and me along with them. Ditching the data on the front end of my watch has allowed me entrance back into the void, a mental space that is intentionally emptied of daily worries, allowing for focus, emotional balance, and a sense of fully being alive, as described by Haruki Murakami in his book, What I Think About When I Think About Running. I'm not saying there's an absolute correct way to run or reason for running. We all started this journey for a different reason, and we're all on paths that are uniquely our own. 99% of the time, I don't run with music or a podcast, which allows my brain to decompress and find a meditative state. I know some people use music to help get them there, or at least to get through the workout. You do you. But I might suggest trying it though. Ditch the technology, unplug, and get a little uncomfortable, and get comfortable with getting a little uncomfortable with yourself. Tune into your body and see what happens. You don't have to do this for every single run. Just maybe try it one run, or maybe start doing it one run a week. I know I do usually have my easy runs midweek, one or two of those, and those are usually just a me thing. I also do a workout run, usually 2 times a week. And sometimes those happen before a group run, but during that workout run, that's my primitive, thoughtful state where I'm just trying to survive it. And then I get the group run in, conversations. And then the weekends can vary. Sometimes I have those long runs all by myself, and it's all up here. And then sometimes I have most of those long run miles with a friend. And again, we solve all the world problems. We have a few laughs. There's very seldom emptiness in all those hours I spend with my friends. Also a good place to be mentally. But yeah, try to go into a run without any of things. Tune into your body and see what happens. You might have to overcome some demons along the way, but you just might find a simple peace not felt before as you reach the void. And who knows what you might find there. I'll leave you with some thoughts from a poem that I wrote. And yes, I dabble in that too. In fact, I've self-published 2 books, Wandering Wanderings and Wayfaring Whispers, both of which are available only on Amazon if you want to check them out. Just a little shameless self-promotion here. Anyways, I'm going to leave you with the following poem to perhaps ponder on your next run. Time stands still, yet it feels as if eons have passed. A strange feeling, but I hope it lasts. A sense of being lost, but also feeling right at home. A peculiar sensation as I let my thoughts roam. At times I feel like I am dying, and yet that's when I feel most alive. A compelling contradiction on which I thrive. So many thoughts run through my head, and yet there's this stillness in my mind. This is an anomaly that is one of a kind. It feels like I am soaring as each foot strike hits the ground. It brings me a joy while many are confound. I am often on my own, but my thoughts leave me out alone. Through the solitude, I have grown. I find peace and solace here, amidst a world full of chaos outside. To the trails and into the trees I run, and all of my problems subside. This is the unknown dimension, a place between time and space. And running into the unknown, that is where I find my happy place. The Unknown, by yours truly.
This has been a JWBN production. Thanks for listening.